My name is David Reeves. I am 41 years old. And the first time my brother Marcus told my son to move, it was a plastic chair at a backyard barbecue in 2009. Elijah was 4. Marcus said the chair was for his business partner's kid. I thought it was a seating issue. That was 15 years ago. By the time I stopped counting, the total came to $214,000 in direct financial transfers, 11 displaced holidays, and one 7-year-old boy who learned to check if his seat was actually his before he sat down. The smell hit me first that last evening. Rosemary and rendered fat. Marcus always roasted lamb when he wanted people to feel grateful. I was standing in his dining room doorway holding a bottle of wine that cost me $47, which was $30 more than I would normally spend, because Marcus notices bottles. I noticed the table, 14 place settings, white linen napkins folded into something architectural, and 13 chairs. I counted again, 14 settings, 13 chairs. My hands tightened around the neck of that bottle until the foil cap cut a thin line into my index finger. I didn't move. I was already running the arithmetic. 14 guests confirmed, 13 chairs purchased for this new set Marcus had been talking about for weeks, and my son's place card sitting at the end of the table beside a setting with no chair beneath it. Not missing, never ordered. Marcus came around the corner wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. Eli can sit at the breakfast bar. The new chairs are a specific set. I ordered exactly what I needed. I said, sure. He heard agreement. What he couldn't hear was the fact that I'd been a procurement fraud analyst for the federal government for 9 years. I track purchase orders for a living. I verify what was ordered versus what was received, versus what was billed, versus what was actually needed. I find the gap between what people say they bought and what the numbers prove they intended. That skill had exposed $19 million in fraudulent government contracts over my career. It was about to audit my own family. I kept records of all of it, not because I planned to use them, because that's what I do. I track things. Before I take you through what those records show, tell me, what time is it where you are? Because I remember the time of every single incident in this list. The system started with my mother. She died when Marcus and I were 23 and 19 respectively. Left a house, a small investment account, and instructions in her will that were unambiguous, split evenly. Marcus was executor. He was 23 and already running a small construction supply company. I was 19, just starting my accounting degree, working nights at a distribution warehouse. Marcus told me the estate was worth $40,000 total after debts. He gave me $20,000. I was 19. I didn't ask to see the paperwork. I used that money for tuition. Years later, and I mean years, not months, I learned the house alone sold for $136,000. The investment account held another $31,000. My share should have been $83,500. That brought the running total to $63,500. And we were only in 2004. In 2007, Marcus asked me to co-sign a business loan. $45,000. He said his credit was temporarily frozen due to an identity theft issue. I co-signed. He defaulted 14 months later. I paid $38,000 over 3 years to protect my credit score, the same credit score I needed to qualify for Elijah's future college savings account. That brought the total to $101,500. In 2011, Marcus's company landed a municipal contract. He asked me to consult on the bookkeeping, unpaid. Family helps family, he said. I spent 4 months reconciling his accounts, setting up his invoicing system, training his office manager. He billed the municipality $16,000 for administrative consulting services and pocketed it. I found the invoice years later in a file I wasn't supposed to see. That brought the total to $117,500. In 2014, he borrowed my truck for a weekend. Returned it 11 weeks later with 4,200 new miles, a cracked windshield, and a fuel tank so empty the engine sputtered pulling into my driveway. The repair and rental replacement cost me $3,400, $120,900. In 2016, Elijah's 8th birthday, Marcus offered to host the party at his house. bigger yard, more space for the kids. Then charged me $1,200 for catering he'd arranged without asking. Said the invoice was from the caterer. It wasn't, it was from his girlfriend's side business. The actual food cost, I checked, because checking is what I do, was $340. $121,760. The irony was that I spent every working day tracing the paper trails of people who overbilled and underdelivered and relied on no one asking questions. I was trained to see exactly this pattern. I saw it in strangers' spreadsheets 5 days a week and somehow convinced myself that the identical pattern in my own family was just Marcus being Marcus, as if the behavior changed its nature depending on whether I loved the person doing it. In 2018, Marcus told Elijah he could have a summer job at his warehouse. Elijah was 13, eager, showed up every day for 6 weeks. Marcus paid him $200 total. For 6 weeks, said it was a learning experience. Elijah didn't complain, he just stopped asking Marcus for anything. A 13-year-old learned that his uncle's generosity had terms printed in font too small to read. $121,960, plus whatever you calculate a child's trust is worth. In 2020, Marcus's divorce, he asked to store some things in my garage. Those things turned out to be $80,000 worth of construction equipment he was hiding from asset disclosure. I didn't know the value at the time. I found out when his ex-wife's attorney called me. I had to hire my own lawyer to prove I wasn't complicit. Cost me $7,400, $129,360. In 2022, Marcus needed a bridge loan, $40,000, said his new house closing was delayed. I gave it from Elijah's college fund because Marcus said it would be 60 days. It was never repaid. When I asked, Marcus said, "You'll get it back when the Holbrook project closes. Relax." The Holbrook project closed 8 months later. I saw the public filings. He bought a boat, $169,360. Then came the dinner. November 2023, 14 settings, 13 chairs, and my son, now 18, a freshman at State on partial scholarship because his college fund had a $40,000 hole in it, told to sit at the breakfast bar. Elijah looked at me. He didn't say anything. His jaw set the way mine does when I'm calculating something I don't want to calculate. He turned toward the kitchen without a word. I said, "Eli, stay." He stopped. Marcus looked up from his wine. "David, it's fine. There's plenty of room at the bar." I set down the $47 bottle of wine on his 14-person table and said, "I want to show you something. I'm going to take you through what I found year by year, but first, drop your location in the comments. I want to know how many people are watching someone finally read the numbers out loud." The week after that dinner, I went home and opened the file I'd been building. Not because of the chair was the final entry, but I'd started the file in 2020, the day Marcus's ex-wife's attorney called me. That phone call activated something professional in me that I'd been keeping separate from family. I stopped keeping it separate. Layer 1 was the dinner itself, the obvious insult, an 18-year-old told to move, a place setting without a chair ordered for it. That wasn't an oversight. Marcus ordered those chairs 8 weeks before the dinner. I confirmed this with the furniture company directly. 14 settings planned, 13 chairs ordered on the same purchase order. The 14th was never on it. Layer 2 opened when I pulled the estate documents from 2004. I'd never requested them as a 19-year-old. But as a 40-year-old procurement fraud analyst, I submitted a formal request to the county recorder and the title company that handled the sale. The house sold for $136,400. The investment account, I obtained the closing statement from the brokerage, held $31,200. Marcus had filed a final accounting with the probate court, showing total estate value of $40,000 and distribution of $20,000 to me. The filing was signed, notarized, and the notary's commission had expired 6 months before the date on the document. I found this because I check notary commissions. It is the single most common flaw in fraudulent procurement filings. People assume no one looks. Layer 3 was the pattern across time. I contacted Marcus's ex-wife, Janelle. She didn't want to talk at first. Then I told her what the estate documents showed. She went quiet for a long time. Then she said, "He did the same thing to his business partner in 2015, Rick Salerno, forced him out and kept the client list. Rick couldn't prove it because Marcus had restructured the LLC paperwork 3 months before. I have the emails. She sent me 14 emails. Rick Salerno's name was on the original LLC. Marcus filed amended articles removing him, backdated. The state filing showed the amendment submitted in March 2015. The email discussion about removing Rick happened in June 2015, 3 months after the document claimed it was done. That brought the total to $169,360 in direct financial losses. But Layer 4 made the money irrelevant. I obtained copies of my mother's original will from the attorney who drafted it. Not the version Marcus filed with the court, the version her attorney kept in their archives. They were different. My mother's original will named me as executor, not Marcus. The version filed with probate court named Marcus. The attorney's copy bore my mother's original signature. The filed copy bore a signature that matched in general appearance, but the lowercase r in her surname had a different entry stroke. I spent 4 hours under magnification confirming this. The filed will also contained a clause, not present in the original, giving Marcus authority over all financial accounts and investment instruments pending distribution. My mother never wrote that clause. Marcus didn't just take more than his share. He manufactured the authority to do so by altering a dead woman's will. That reframed everything, every loan, every unpaid debt, every displaced seat, all of it built on a foundation of forged authority from 2004, 20 years. The total was $214,000 in documented losses. But the real number, the number that kept me awake, was one forged document, 20 years of a family operating under terms my mother never set. Marcus held his annual New Year's open house, his showpiece event. His home, the 5-bedroom house with the chef's kitchen and the wine cellar he'd built with profits from the Holbrook project. 40 guests, catered, a toast he gave every year about family and legacy and what their mother would have thought. I arrived at 8:15. Elijah was with me. I'd told him what I found, all of it. He'd sat at my kitchen table reading documents for 3 hours without speaking. When he finished, he looked at me and said, "How long have you known?" I said, "All of it, 62 days. He nodded once. That was the only conversation we had about it before the party. I waited until after Marcus's toast. He stood in his living room, champagne raised, talking about Mom, her values, her belief in family. I let him finish. I even let people applaud. Then I walked to the center of the room. Marcus saw me moving and smiled. "David wants to say something. Must be the wine talking." I said, "I have documents I'd like to share with everyone here." His smile thinned. "This isn't the time, David." "It's exactly the time." I set a folder on the granite island. His granite island, the one he'd shown every guest on the tour. I opened it. "David, you're embarrassing yourself." That was tactic 1, reframing me as the problem. I placed the first document. "This is Mom's will, the one her attorney kept. And this," I placed the second, "is the one you filed with the court. They're different. You're confused. You've always been confused about the estate." Tactic 2, credibility attack. "He had some kind of episode after Mom died," Marcus said to the room. "He's never really gotten over it." I placed the third document. "This is the probate court filing showing estate value of $40,000, and this is the title company record showing the house sold for $136,400. Marcus's wife, Karen, stepped forward. "Marcus, what is this?" "It's nothing. David has never understood business. He's a government clerk." Tactic 3, dismissal, minimization. That's when the front door opened. Janelle, Marcus's ex-wife, walked in with Rick Salerno. I hadn't invited them. Karen had. She'd called Janelle 3 days earlier after I'd shown Karen the documents privately. Karen arranged their presence without telling Marcus or me. Janelle set a USB drive on the counter beside my folder. "Those are the emails," she said, "all 14, time-stamped, and Rick brought the original LLC filing with his name on it." Marcus looked at Karen. "You did this?" Karen said nothing. Marcus turned back to the room. "This is a family matter. Can we please?" I said the only thing left to say. "Quiet, Flat. The way I state findings in a deposition. You altered a dead woman's will to give yourself authority she never granted you. Then you spent 20 years collecting from the people who trusted that authority. The room went silent. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I can explain all of this. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The documents were on his granite island, the island he'd bought with money taken from a forged foundation, and 40 people were reading them. I took Elijah's arm. We walked out. The investigation opened in February. The county prosecutor's office took the probate fraud referral seriously. Forging a will is a felony, and there's no statute of limitations on fraud against an estate in our state. Marcus's attorney negotiated for 4 months. In April, the IRS opened a separate inquiry into unreported income from the estate and the $16,000 consulting invoice he'd billed to the municipality under my labor. In May, Karen filed for legal separation. She moved to her sister's house with their 2 children. She sent me a text that said, "I should have looked sooner. I'm sorry I didn't." I read it 3 times. I didn't respond for 2 weeks. When I did, I said, "I know." That was true and incomplete, and it was all I could offer. In June, Rick Salerno filed a civil suit for his share of the LLC's client revenue from 2015 to present. Marcus's business insurance wouldn't cover it. The policy excluded claims arising from fraudulent acts. In July, Marcus's contractor's license was suspended pending the criminal investigation. His 3 active projects were transferred to other firms. His largest client, a regional hospital chain, terminated their contract with a letter citing material concerns regarding financial integrity. In August, the boat was repossessed. Marcus had financed it against the business line of credit, which was called in when the license suspension became public record. In September, I received a check for $83,500, my correct share of the estate, with interest, ordered by the probate court after I filed a petition to reopen the administration. The judge's order noted that the original filing contained material irregularities consistent with unauthorized alteration. Marcus pleaded guilty in November to 1 count of forgery and 1 count of fraud against an estate. Sentenced to 18 months probation, full restitution, and 200 hours of community service. Not prison, but a felony record, for a contractor, in a field where bonding requires clean background checks. Karen completed her gray zone arc slowly. She'd been complicit for years, not in the forgery, but in the silence. She'd watched Marcus diminish Elijah, watched him treat my contributions as owed, watched the dinner seating, and said nothing because the house was comfortable and the holidays were catered. But when I showed her the documents, just the estate numbers, nothing else, she sat with them for 4 days. On the 5th day, she called Janelle. That was her small brave act, and it changed the confrontation entirely. Her apology to me came in October, in person at a coffee shop. She said, "I let him define what was normal. I knew it wasn't. I'm sorry I let your son grow up inside that." I said, "Thank you for saying that." I did not say it was okay. It wasn't, but her honesty was real, and I could hold both truths at once. Elijah transferred to a 4-year university in January. Full tuition paid. The $83,500 from the estate restitution covered what the college fund should have always held. He called me the night he got his acceptance letter. He said, "Dad, there's a seat." I knew what he meant. He didn't have to explain it. In March, I paid off my truck, the same truck Marcus had returned with 4,200 extra miles and a cracked windshield. In April, I took Elijah to dinner. A restaurant Marcus would have chosen. White tablecloths, lamb on the menu. I reserved a table for 2. 2 settings, 2 chairs, both occupied. No one told anyone to move. What I've learned, and this took longer than the investigation, longer than the court proceedings, longer than any document I've ever analyzed, is that a running total is not just a number. It is a record of every time you decided that the relationship was worth more than the cost, and it is. Until the moment you realize the relationship was never the thing being preserved. The thing being preserved was access. Access to your labor, your silence, your willingness to sit somewhere else without asking why. A boundary is not a punishment. It is the first honest statement in a conversation that was never honest to begin with. I didn't set a boundary to hurt Marcus. I set one because my son was 18 years old and still checking whether his chair was real before he sat in it. That pattern would have continued until someone named it. I named it, with documents, because that's what I do. The total was $214,000. That's what the ledger showed. But the ledger couldn't show what it costs a child to learn that belonging is conditional. It couldn't show what it costs a man to realize his mother's last wishes were rewritten by the person she trusted most. Those numbers don't fit in columns, they live in the body. In the reflex of counting chairs before you sit, in the way your son looks at you before he chooses a seat, checking, always checking, if this one is really his. If you sat down tonight and added up everything you've given to the people who call you family, not in gratitude but in debt, what would the total be? And what would you do if you saw it written down? This story is a fictional narrative created for entertainment, education, and dramatic reflection. We hope it reminded you that your dignity is not negotiable, and that setting a boundary, even a painful one, can be an act of love for yourself and everyone the pattern would have reached next.